Sunlight drizzled through the shifting surface of Drevis's ocean, fracturing into pale beams that struggled to penetrate the depths. Nylara welcomed the cold kiss of water against her skin as she sank deeper. The pain from her ruptured organs and shattered bones was fading now, replaced by a numbing cold that felt almost like comfort. The orange glow of her skin, once vibrant as a tarry sunset, had dimmed to a sickly amber. Blood clouded the water around her, a dark halo announcing her impending death. This was the glory she had trained for her entire life. As a first warrior of the Ethetheran Empire, there was no greater honor than perishing in battle against the Drayok, especially in defense of the mineral-rich asteroid belt that had been the center of their centuries-long conflict. Her fighter had been shot down in a surprise attack, but she had taken 3 enemy vessels with her before crashing into the ocean world of Drevis. As consciousness began to fade, Nylara felt at peace. The ancient Ethetheran texts spoke of warriors meeting death with open eyes, embracing the darkness as an old friend. The pain of her injuries drifted away like distant echoes. The current pulled her deeper into the abyss, and she surrendered to its embrace. This was her final moment, the culmination of a life dedicated to combat and sacrifice. She would join the honored ranks of fallen Ethetheran warriors, her name etched into the Hall of Glorious Deaths. Her clan would celebrate her passage with pride, rather than mourn her loss. This was the way. Then the impossible happened. A massive shape cut through the water above her. Not Ethetheran, not Drayok, something else entirely. A human submersible craft, its lights cutting harsh white paths through the murky depths. No, Nylara thought, not now. Not when she had finally achieved the perfect death. A figure emerged from the craft, swimming toward her with powerful strokes. As it approached, Nylara recognized the silhouette of a human male, encased in an environmental suit. She tried to summon the strength to draw her blade, to die fighting as a true warrior should, but her limbs refused to respond. The human reached for her, strong arms encircling her broken body. Nylara's vision blurred as he pulled her upward, away from the comforting darkness, away from her rightful death. In her fading consciousness, one thought burned with perfect clarity. This human had not saved her. He had stolen her glory. The last thing she saw before blackness claimed her was the human's face through his helmet, determined, compassionate, and utterly ignorant of the dishonor he had just inflicted upon her. Consciousness returned in fragments. First came the awareness of pain, sharp, insistent, and everywhere. Next, the rhythmic beeping of medical monitors. Then, the sterile scent of antiseptics and the soft hum of life support systems. Nylara forced her eyes open, squinting against the harsh light of what appeared to be a medical bay. She was alive. The realization struck her like a physical blow. She had been denied her glorious death, robbed of her rightful place among the honored fallen. Shame washed over her, followed quickly by rage. "You're awake, good." The voice came from her right. Nylara turned her head, wincing at the pain that radiated down her spine. A human male stood beside her bed, checking readings on a holographic display. He was tall for his species, with dark hair cropped short and features that might have been considered handsome by human standards. His eyes, an unusual shade of green, met hers without flinching. "You were nearly gone when I pulled you from the ocean," he said. 3 broken ribs, punctured lung, internal bleeding, fractured femur, and skull trauma. It's a miracle you survived." "Not a miracle," Nylara spat, her voice raspy from disuse. "An insult." The human's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me." "You should have left me to die with honor," she hissed. "Instead, you condemned me to live in shame." Understanding dawned on the human's face. "Ah, you're a Ethetheran, the death cult thing." "It is not a cult," Nylara said, struggling to sit up despite the searing pain. "It is our highest purpose, our greatest glory." The human moved forward, adjusting something on the medical equipment. Well, I didn't know that when I saw a person drowning. I just saw someone who needed help. I did not need help, Nylara said through clenched teeth. I needed to die. Sorry to disappoint you. He didn't sound sorry at all. I'm Elliot Drake, by the way. Former Earth Alliance combat medic, now independent contractor. You're on my ship, the Nomad. I am First Warrior Nylara of the Imperial Athetheran Fleet, she replied automatically. And you have no right to keep me here. True enough, Elliot said with a shrug. But you're in no condition to go anywhere. You need at least a week of regenerative therapy before those bones will hold your weight. Nylara glared at him. Return me to my people. Would if I could, Elliot replied, typing something into a console. But we're in Sector 87, which is crawling with Driok patrols. I can't exactly broadcast an Athetheran distress signal without bringing them down on both our heads. Before she could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Elliot swore under his breath, rushing to a nearby monitor. Speaking of the devils, he muttered. Driok patrol cruiser, heading this way. They must have detected your fighter's crash. Let them come, Nylara said, a surge of hope rising in her chest. Perhaps she could still achieve a warrior's death after all. I will face them as befits a first warrior. Elliot gave her a withering look. You can barely sit up, and I have no intention of dying today. He hit a series of buttons on the console. We're going to have to run. Coward, Nylara spat. Pragmatist, Elliot corrected, securing various loose items around the medical bay. Driok don't take prisoners. They shoot first and collect DNA samples later, and I've got urgent cargo to deliver. The ship lurched suddenly, throwing Nylara back against the bed. Pain exploded through her body, and she bit back a scream. Sorry about that, Elliot called as he rushed from the room. Gotta get to the bridge. Try not to die after all the work I put into keeping you alive. Alone in the medical bay, Nylara struggled against the restraints that held her to the bed. The ship continued to pitch and roll, suggesting evasive maneuvers. Each movement sent fresh waves of agony through her broken body, but she welcomed the pain. It was preferable to the shame that threatened to consume her. After what seemed like an eternity, the ship's movements smoothed out. The door to the medical bay slid open, and Elliot returned, looking grim but satisfied. Lost them in Terrace 3's upper atmosphere, he said. The ion layer scrambles their sensors. We should be safe for now. You should have let them find us, Nylara said coldly. Yeah. Well, I've never been good at doing what I should. He approached her bed, checking her vitals. You tore open some of your sutures. I need to fix those. As he worked on her wounds, Nylara studied him. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, betraying years of medical training. Yet, there was a hardness to his eyes that spoke of combat experience. An enigma. This human. Why do you travel alone? She asked finally. Curiosity temporarily overriding her anger. Who says I'm alone? I've got you for company now. When she didn't smile at his poor attempt at humor, he sighed. I left the Alliance when I realized they were more interested in body counts than saving lives. Decided I could do more good as an independent. And what good do you think you've done by saving me? Nylara challenged. Elliot met her gaze steadily. I didn't save an Athetheran warrior. I saved a drowning person. Species doesn't matter to me. It should, she retorted. We are nothing alike. You and I... No. He finished dressing her wound and stepped back. We both fight for what we believe in. The difference is what we're willing to die for. He paused. Or rather, what we're willing to live for. Before Nylara could formulate a response, another alarm sounded, different from the first, but no less urgent. They're back, Elliot muttered, checking a monitor. And they've brought friends. Hang on. The ship lurched again as Elliot rushed from the room. This time, Nylara felt the unmistakable vibration of weapon fire striking the hull. The Drayok were shooting at them. Good. If this human ship was destroyed, she might yet achieve her honorable death. But the Nomad proved more resilient than it appeared. Despite several direct hits, the ship continued its evasive pattern. Through the small viewport in the medical bay, Nylara caught glimpses of a harsh, desert landscape as they descended toward the surface of Terrace 3. When Elliot returned, his face was streaked with sweat, and a fresh cut adorned his forehead. "We're setting down at Helio Station," he announced, moving quickly around the room, gathering supplies. "It's a small mining outpost, mostly automated. The station manager owes me a favor." "The Drayok will follow us," Nylara warned. "They do not respect neutral territories. I'm counting on the mining corporation's security protocols to give them pause," Elliot replied. "And if not, well..." He patted a holstered weapon at his side. "I didn't survive 3 tours in the Verge by being helpless." The landing was rough, jostling Nylara painfully despite the restraints. As soon as they touched down, Elliot was at her bedside, disconnecting her from the various machines. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Of course," Nylara said defiantly, though she wasn't at all certain. Elliot helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight as her legs threatened to buckle. The pain was excruciating, but Nylara refused to show weakness in front of this human. "We need to get to the station before the Drayok arrive," Elliot explained as they made their slow way toward the airlock. "My contact can hide us, but only if we reach him first." Outside, the air was hot and dry, filled with fine dust that immediately coated Nylara's skin. The twin suns of the Terrace system beat down mercilessly, their combined heat making it difficult to breathe. In the distance, a collection of utilitarian buildings shimmered in the heat haze. Helio Station. "It's about half a kilometer," Elliot said, adjusting his grip on her waist. "Think you can make it?" Nylara didn't bother to respond, instead focusing all her energy on putting one foot in front of the other. Each step was agony, but she refused to falter. She was a Thetherin. She would not show weakness. They had covered perhaps half the distance when the distinctive whine of Drayok engines cut through the air. Elliot glanced over his shoulder, cursing softly. "They're early," he muttered. "We need to move faster." "Leave me," Nylara said, the words coming automatically. "Save yourself." Elliot shot her a look of mingled surprise and amusement. "Not a chance. I didn't pull you out of that ocean just to abandon you in a desert." He increased their pace, practically dragging her the remaining distance to the station. They reached the main entrance just as the Drayok vessel touched down near the Nomad. A heavy-set human with a thick beard was waiting for them, anxiety written across his weathered features. "Cutting it close. Drake," he growled, ushering them inside. "And you brought company. That wasn't part of the deal." "Sorry, Harding," Elliot replied, helping Nylara through the doorway. "Circumstances changed. This is Nylara. She's under my protection." Harding's eyes widened as he took in Nylara's distinctive orange skin and the insignia on her damaged flight suit. "Anna Thetherin! Are you insane? The Drayok will tear this station apart looking for her." "Which is why we need your help," Elliot said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "You owe me, remember? Barris Colony?" Harding's expression darkened. "That's low, Drake." "But effective," Elliot countered. "We just need a place to lie low until the Drayok give up and leave." After a moment's hesitation, Harding nodded grudgingly. "Fine. There's a secure room in the East Wing. It's used for storing sensitive equipment. The walls are shielded against scans." "Perfect," Elliot said, already moving in that direction. "Any chance of medical supplies?" "I'll see what I can do," Harding replied. "But you two need to disappear now. The Drayok will be knocking on our door any minute." The secure room was small and cramped, dominated by stacks of equipment crates. Elliot helped Nylara to sit on one of the lower crates before examining the door's locking mechanism. "This should keep them out," he murmured. "At least long enough for us to figure out our next move." Nylara leaned back against the wall, exhaustion and pain threatening to overwhelm her. "There is no us, human. Once I am able, I will return to my fleet." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Elliot asked, raising an eyebrow. "Your fighter is at the bottom of an ocean, and we're in the middle of Driok-controlled space." Before she could respond, a commotion outside caught their attention. Through the thin walls, they could hear the unmistakable sound of Driok voices, harsh and guttural. "They're here," Elliot whispered, his hand moving to the weapon at his side. Nylara straightened, ignoring the pain that shot through her torso. "Give me a weapon. I will not hide like a coward." "You're in no condition to fight," Elliot replied, though he did pull a small blade from his boot and offer it to her. "But I respect your warrior spirit." They sat in tense silence, listening as the Driok questioned Harding and his staff. The station manager's responses were muffled, but seemed calm and confident. After what felt like an eternity, the sounds of the Driok patrol receded. "They're checking the other buildings," Elliot whispered. "But they'll be back. Driok are nothing if not thorough." "They will not leave until they find me," Nylara said grimly. "My death would be a significant victory for them." "Well, you're not dying today," Elliot replied firmly. "Not after I went to all this trouble to keep you alive." Despite herself, Nylara felt a flicker of amusement at his stubborn determination. "You are either very brave or very foolish. Elliot Drake?" "Probably both," he admitted with a small smile. "It's kept me alive so far." A soft knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Elliot tensed, weapon ready, but relaxed when Harding's voice came through. "It's me. I've got those supplies you asked for." Elliot cracked the door open just enough to accept a small package before securing it again. Inside were bandages, painkillers, and a portable medical scanner. "Let me check your wounds," he said, approaching Nylara with the scanner. That walk probably didn't do them any favors. As he worked, Nylara studied him more carefully. Despite his casual demeanor, there was a precision to his movements that spoke of military training. And beneath his apparent concern for her welfare, she sensed a deeper motivation. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked abruptly. "What do you gain?" Elliot's hands paused briefly before continuing their work. "Not everything is about gain, Nylara. Sometimes people just help each other because it's the right thing to do." "An Athetheran would never save a Driok," she countered. "Our peoples have been at war for generations." "And how's that working out for everyone?" Elliot asked dryly. "Endless war, countless deaths. And for what? Control of some rocks floating in space? Those rocks contain the richest deposits of quantum-stabilizing minerals in this sector," Nylara said stiffly. "Essential for faster-than-light travel." "I know what they contain," Elliot replied, applying a fresh bandage to her side. "I also know that there are enough resources there to satisfy both empires for centuries. The only reason the war continues is because neither side is willing to share." Nylara fell silent, considering his words. It was true that the asteroid belt was vast, its resources seemingly limitless. Yet the thought of sharing with the Driok was anathema to her people. The enemy deserved only death, not cooperation. "Your wounds are holding together, but you need rest," Elliot said, breaking into her thoughts. "Try to sleep if you can. I'll keep watch." Despite her determination to remain alert, exhaustion soon claimed Nylara. She drifted into an uneasy sleep, haunted by dreams of drowning, not in water, but in shame. She awoke to the sound of urgent whispers. Elliot and Harding were huddled by the door, their expressions grim. "What has happened?" she asked, pushing herself upright. Elliot turned to her, his face tight with tension. "The Driok are planning a full sweep of the station, including the automated sections. They'll find us here. Then we must leave, Nylara said, already struggling to her feet. Easier said than done, Harding muttered. They've got patrols covering all exits. Not all exits, Elliot corrected. The maintenance tunnels. They lead to the secondary landing pad. Harding shook his head. Those tunnels haven't been used in years. They could be collapsed, or worse. It's our only option, Elliot insisted. Can you get us access? After a moment's hesitation, Harding nodded reluctantly. There's an entrance panel in the storage room across the hall, but you'll need to move fast. The Dreyok will start their sweep in less than an hour. Then we go now, Elliot decided, turning to Nylara. Can you walk? She straightened her spine, ignoring the pain that radiated through her body. I am a Thetherin. We do not falter. Elliot's mouth quirked in what might have been admiration. Then let's go. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and poorly lit, their walls slick with condensation. The air was thick with the smell of rust and decay. Nylara moved as quickly as her injuries would allow, but each step sent fresh waves of agony through her body. Here, Elliot said, offering her a small injector. Painkillers. Military grade? Nylara hesitated. Pain was a warrior's companion, a reminder of one's mortality and fragility. To numb it seemed dishonest somehow. It's not weakness to accept help, Elliot said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. It's pragmatism. We need to move faster. After a moment's consideration, Nylara accepted the injector, pressing it against her neck. The relief was immediate, a cool wave washing away the worst of the pain, leaving only a dull ache in its wake. Better? Elliot asked. Nylara nodded, unable to deny the improvement. It will suffice. They continued through the tunnels, guided by Harding's hasty directions. The path twisted and turned, descending deeper into the station's infrastructure. Occasionally, they would hear the echo of Dreyok voices above them, sending them into tense stillness until the danger passed. Why do they hunt us with such determination? Elliot whispered during one such pause. Surely one Thetherin warrior isn't worth this much effort. I am not just any warrior, Nylara replied. I am First Warrior Nylara, commander of the 7th Fleet's attack wing. My death would be a significant blow to Thetherin morale. Elliot's eyebrows rose. A high-ranking officer, huh? You might have mentioned that earlier. Would it have changed your decision to help me? No, he admitted after a moment. But it would have explained the Dreyok's persistence. They resumed their journey, the tunnels gradually widening as they approached the secondary landing pad. According to Harding, it was rarely used, primarily serving as an emergency evacuation point for the station's minimal staff. As they neared the exit, Elliot held up a hand, signaling for silence. Through the thin metal door ahead, they could hear voices, Dreyok voices. They've got the pad covered, Elliot whispered, his expression darkening. We'll have to find another way. Nylara considered their options. The painkillers had cleared her mind, allowing her tactical training to resurface. How many? Elliot pressed his ear to the door. 2, maybe 3. Sounds like a standard patrol. I can handle 3 Dreyok, Nylara said, her hand tightening around the small blade he had given her. In your condition? I don't think so, Elliot replied. Besides, we need to reach the Nomad without raising alarms. A firefight would bring the entire Dreyok force down on us. He was right, though she was loath to admit it. What do you suggest? Elliot thought for a moment, then smiled grimly. Distraction. Classic military tactic. I set off an alarm in another section of the station, drawing them away long enough for us to reach the ship. And how will you trigger this alarm without being captured? Nylara challenged. Leave that to me, Elliot said, checking his weapon. Wait here. When you hear the alarm, count to 30, then make for the Nomad. The entry code is 7439 Alpha. Before she could protest, he was gone, slipping through a side passage that branched off from the main tunnel. Nilara leaned against the wall, frustrated by her own helplessness. She was a warrior, not someone who needed protection. Minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. Then, suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station, their wailing echoing even into the maintenance tunnels. As instructed, Nilara counted to 30, then cautiously opened the door to the landing pad. The area was deserted, the Driok patrol having rushed toward the source of the alarm. In the distance, she could see the Nomad, its sleek form a welcome sight after the claustrophobic tunnels. Moving as quickly as her injuries would allow, Nilara crossed the open space to the ship. Behind her, she could hear shouting. The Driok had realized they'd been tricked. She punched in the entry code Elliot had given her, relief washing over her as the airlock hissed open. Once inside, she sealed the door and made her way to the bridge. The ship's controls were unfamiliar, but not incomprehensible. She powered up the engines, preparing for immediate departure. But where was Elliot? The alarms continued to wail, and through the viewport, she could see Driok soldiers swarming across the landing pad. There was no sign of the human. Nilara's hands hovered over the controls. The logical choice was clear. Leave now, while she still could. The human had served his purpose. His fate was no concern of hers. And yet, he had saved her life, twice now. Such a debt could not be ignored, even if his actions had robbed her of an honorable death. A Thetheran honor demanded that she repay him. Decision made. Nilara powered up the ship's weapon systems instead of the engines. She had observed Elliot operating them during their escape from the Driok patrol. The interface was crude compared to a Thetheran technology, but functional. As the first Driok soldiers approached the ship, she fired a warning shot, blasting a crater in the landing pad just meters from their position. They scattered, diving for cover. Through the commotion, a figure emerged from a service door at the edge of the pad. Elliot, running full tilt toward the Nomad. Behind him, more Driok soldiers appeared, weapons raised. Nilara fired again, this time targeting the door from which the Driok had emerged. The blast sealed it shut in a shower of sparks and debris, cutting off their pursuit. Elliot reached the ship, punching in the entry code with frantic haste. Moments later, he burst onto the bridge, breathing heavily. "What are you still doing here? You were supposed to take off." "And leave you behind?" Nilara asked, raising an eyebrow. "My people do not abandon those who have aided them." A complicated expression crossed Elliot's face. Surprise, followed by something like gratitude. "Well, thanks for that, but we're not out of this yet." He slid into the pilot's seat, his hands dancing over the controls with practiced ease. The Nomad lifted off, engines straining as they pushed for maximum acceleration. "They're scrambling fighters," Elliot muttered, eyes fixed on the sensor display. "We need to break atmosphere before they catch us." The ship shuddered as they punched through Terrace 3's upper atmosphere, the hull heating up from the friction. Behind them, the sleek forms of Driok pursuit craft appeared on the sensors, closing rapidly. "They're faster than we are," Nilara observed, studying the tactical display. "We cannot outrun them." "No," Elliot agreed grimly. "But we might be able to outsmart them. There's a canyon system about 20 kilometers north. The rock formations there should scramble their targeting systems." He banked the ship sharply, heading toward the coordinates he'd indicated. The Driok pursuers adjusted course, maintaining their pursuit but not gaining significant ground. The canyon came into view, a vast gash in the planet's surface, its walls rising hundreds of meters on either side. Elliot plunged the Nomad into the narrow space, navigating by instinct as much as instrumentation. "Hang on," he warned as he executed a series of tight maneuvers, weaving between stone pillars and under natural arches. "This is going to get rough." The Driok followed, their smaller craft more maneuverable but their pilots less familiar with the terrain. One miscalculated a turn, clipping its wing against a stone outcropping. The fighter spun out of control, exploding against the canyon wall in a brilliant fireball. "One down," Elliot muttered, his focus unwavering. The remaining pursuers became more cautious, maintaining distance but not abandoning the chase. Ahead, the canyon narrowed further, barely wide enough for the nomad to pass through. "We'll never make it," Nylara said, eyeing the gap skeptically. "Trust me," Elliot replied, a reckless grin spreading across his face. "I've threaded tighter needles than this." He rotated the ship 90 degrees, slipping sideways through the narrow passage with centimeters to spare. The Driok, attempting to follow, were not so fortunate. One clipped the canyon wall, damaging its stabilizers and forcing it to pull up and away. The other made it through but emerged disoriented, its sensors temporarily confused by the maneuver. "Now for the coup de grace," Elliot said, bringing the Nomad around in a tight loop. He activated the ship's forward weapons, targeting a massive boulder perched precariously at the top of the canyon. The shot was perfect. The boulder dislodged, tumbling down the canyon wall, directly into the path of the remaining Driok fighter. The pilot tried to evade but was too slow. The massive rock crushed the small craft like an insect, sending a plume of fire and debris into the air. "That should buy us some time," Elliot said, steering the Nomad deeper into the canyon system. "There's a network of caves about 5 kilometers ahead. We can hide there until things cool down." Nylara stared at him in undisguised amazement. "That was impressive flying." Elliot glanced at her, surprise evident in his expression. Was that actually a compliment? From an Athetheran warrior to a lowly human? "Do not push your luck," Nylara replied, though there was less hostility in her tone than before. "I merely acknowledge skill where I see it." The cave system Elliot had mentioned turned out to be a vast network of underground chambers, some large enough to accommodate the Nomad comfortably. He navigated by the ship's sensors, eventually bringing them to rest in a particularly spacious cavern. "This should shield us from their scanners," he said, powering down all non-essential systems. "We'll wait until nightfall, then try to break orbit under cover of darkness." With the immediate danger past, Nylara became acutely aware of her injuries once more. The painkillers were wearing off, allowing agony to seep back into her consciousness. She must have swayed slightly, because Elliot was suddenly at her side, supporting her weight. "You need rest," he said, his voice gentler than she had heard it before. "And proper medical treatment, not just field patches." He helped her to the medical bay, easing her onto the bed with surprising tenderness. As he began checking her wounds, Nylara found herself studying his face, the concentration in his eyes, the slight furrow between his brows, the hint of stubble along his jaw. "Why did you become a medic?" she asked suddenly. "Your skills would have made you an excellent pilot or tactician." Elliot's hands paused briefly before resuming their work. "My mother was a doctor. She taught me that healing was the noblest calling." A shadow crossed his face. "She died during the Verge conflict. Driok attack on a civilian hospital." "Yet you saved me," Nylara said softly. "An enemy." "You're not my enemy," Elliot replied, meeting her gaze. "The Driok who bombed that hospital? They're my enemy. The politicians who continue this pointless war? They're my enemy." He shook his head. "Individual soldiers just following orders? They're victims, same as anyone else." His words unsettled her, challenging beliefs she had held her entire life. "Our war with the Driok is just, they would claim our territories, strip our worlds of resources. And your people would do the same to them," Elliot pointed out. "Both sides claim the moral high ground, but from where I'm standing, you're all just pawns in a game played by those in power." "You speak treason," Nylara said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I speak truth," Elliot countered. "And deep down, I think you know it." Before she could respond, the ship's proximity alert sounded, a low, pulsing tone that indicated approaching vessels. "They found us," Elliot muttered, rushing to the bridge. Nylara followed, ignoring the pain that accompanied each movement. On the sensor display, multiple red dots were converging on their position. Driok scout ships, she confirmed. They are scanning the cave system. It is only a matter of time before they detect us. Elliot ran a hand through his hair, thinking rapidly. We need a diversion. Something to draw them away long enough for us to slip past. Nylara studied the tactical display, her military training coming to the fore. There is a way, she said slowly, but it will require precise timing and coordination. She outlined her plan quickly. The Drayok would be expecting them to flee deeper into the cave system. Instead, they would power up the Nomad and make a break for the surface, timing their emergence to coincide with the Drayok's scan of the deeper caves. It's risky, Elliot said, considering the strategy. If their timing is off by even a few seconds, they'll catch us in the open. War is always risky, Nylara replied, but this gives us the best chance of success. After a moment's hesitation, Elliot nodded. All right, let's do it your way. They worked quickly, preparing the ship for rapid departure. Elliot at the controls, Nylara monitoring the Drayok movements via the tactical display. They're moving deeper, she reported. As predicted, we have approximately 45 seconds before they realize their error and double back. That's our window, Elliot said, his hands hovering over the engine controls. On your mark. Nylara watched the display intently, counting down in her head. When the moment was right, she gave the signal. Now! The Nomad's engines roared to life, propelling them forward through the twisting cave system toward the surface. Elliot's piloting was flawless, navigating the narrow passages with millimeter precision. They burst into open air just as the first Drayok scout ship began to turn back. For a critical moment, the enemy was caught off guard, their weapon systems powered down for the scanning operation. Full thrust, Nylara commanded, and Elliot complied without hesitation, pushing the Nomad to its maximum acceleration. The Drayok recovered quickly, scrambling to pursue, but the head start was enough. By the time their weapons came online, the Nomad was already climbing through the upper atmosphere, streaking toward the safety of open space. We did it, Elliot said, a note of disbelief in his voice. Your plan worked perfectly. Of course it did, Nylara replied, though she couldn't quite suppress the pride in her voice. I am a first warrior. Tactical excellence is expected. Elliot laughed, a warm, genuine sound that caught Nylara by surprise. And modesty, apparently, is not... Despite herself, Nylara felt her lips curve into a small smile. There is no honor in false humility. Once they reached the relative safety of space, Elliot set a course away from Drayok patrol routes. The strain of their escape had taken its toll on Nylara, and she found herself struggling to remain upright. You should rest, Elliot said, noticing her fatigue. I can handle things here. For once, she didn't argue. The past days had drained her reserves, both physical and emotional. She returned to the medical bay, allowing herself to sink into the bed. Sleep came quickly, but it was far from peaceful. Dreams plagued her, visions of drowning, of dishonor, of returning to her people only to be cast out for failing to achieve a glorious death. She awoke with a start, heart pounding, body slick with sweat. Elliot was there, checking her vitals with a concerned expression. Nightmare? Nylara nodded, not trusting her voice. Want to talk about it? He offered. She should have refused. Athetheran warriors did not discuss their fears or weaknesses. And yet... I dreamed of returning home, she admitted, of facing the shame of survival. Elliot's brow furrowed. I still don't understand why living is shameful to your people. Nylara sighed, searching for words to explain concepts that had been ingrained in her since birth. The Athetheran believed that the greatest honor is to die in battle, protecting our empire. Those who fall are celebrated, their names recorded in the Hall of Glorious Deaths. Those who survive, she hesitated. They are respected for their skills, but always expected to seek that final glory. Sounds like a convenient philosophy for leaders who need cannon fodder, Elliot observed. It is our way, Nylara said defensively. It has been for millennia. And has it brought your people peace, prosperity, happiness? Elliot challenged. The questions unsettled her. She had never thought to measure her culture's success by such metrics. War was constant, resources often strained by military needs. But glory they had in abundance. We have honor, she said finally, and purpose. At what cost? Elliot asked softly. How many lives sacrificed for an abstract concept? Before she could respond, he turned away, moving to a storage compartment across the room. I want to show you something. He returned with a data pad, its screen filled with what appeared to be shipping manifests and financial records. What is this? Nylara asked, confused by the sudden change in topic. Evidence, Elliot replied grimly. The real reason I left the Earth Alliance. I discovered these records during my last tour of duty. As he scrolled through the documents, a disturbing pattern emerged. The Earth Consortium, the corporate conglomerate that controlled much of human space, had been selling weapons to both the Athetheran Empire and the Driok Federation. Not just selling, but actively prolonging the conflict to maximize profits. This can't be true, Nylara whispered, the implications staggering. Our high command would never deal with human weapons merchants. The technology is inferior. But abundant and cheap, Elliot pointed out. Perfect for equipping large numbers of troops who aren't expected to survive anyway. The accusation stung, but Nylara couldn't deny the evidence before her. Internal memos discussed strategies for maintaining market equilibrium by ensuring neither side gained a decisive advantage. Shipments were timed to bolster whichever faction seemed to be weakening, keeping the conflict and the profits flowing. This is why I travel alone, Elliot explained. When I threatened to expose this, I became a liability. There's a price on my head now, not just from the consortium, but from corrupt officials on both sides who benefit from the arrangement. Nylara sat in stunned silence, her world view crumbling around her. If what Elliot showed her was true, then the war she had dedicated her life to, the war she had been prepared to die gloriously in, was nothing but a corporate revenue stream. I need to think, she said finally. This is much to process. Elliot nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take your time. But remember, the Driok are still hunting us. We need to find a safe harbor soon. Left alone with her thoughts, Nylara stared at the ceiling of the medical bay, her mind in turmoil. Everything she had believed, everything she had fought for, suddenly called into question. If the war was a sham, what did that make her? Not a glorious warrior, but a pawn in a game played by corrupt officials and greedy corporations. The thought was almost too painful to bear. Yet she could not dismiss the evidence Elliot had shown her. The documents were too detailed, too specific to be fabricated. And they explained so much: the war's endless nature, the strange equilibrium that had persisted for generations, neither side ever gaining enough advantage to end the conflict. Hours passed as she grappled with these revelations. Eventually, Elliot returned, his expression cautiously hopeful. I've set a course for the Vidian trade post, he announced. It's a neutral station in the outer system, run jointly by humans and Athetherans. We should be safe there while we figure out our next move. Next move? Nylara echoed, focusing on his words with effort. What next move? Exposing the truth, Elliot said simply. With your status as a first warrior and my evidence, we could bring this conspiracy to light, end the war. You are asking me to betray my people, Nylara said, though the accusation lacked conviction. I'm asking you to save them, Elliot countered. How many more Athetherans need to die for corporate profits? How many more will seek glorious deaths in a war that serves only to line the pockets of the corrupt? Put that way, the choice seemed clear, and yet... My people will not thank me for this truth. They will see me as a traitor, seeking to rob them of their purpose. Perhaps at first, Elliot acknowledged. Change is never easy. But in time, they might find new purpose, in peace, in creation rather than destruction. The idea was radical, almost heretical to Ethetheran thinking. And yet, Nylara could not deny its appeal. A world where her people's skills and discipline were directed toward building rather than killing. A world where survival was not shameful, but celebrated. Very well, she said finally. I will help you expose this conspiracy, but I do so for my people, not for you. Elliot smiled, relief evident in his features. Of course, I wouldn't expect anything else. The journey to Vidian trade post took several days, during which Nylara's wounds began to heal in earnest. The Nomad's medical facilities, while basic, were sufficient to speed her recovery. By the time they approached the massive space station, she was able to move without assistance, though still far from her full strength. The trade post was a wonder of engineering, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules orbiting a large moon. Ships of various designs docked at its numerous ports, representing a dozen different species. It was a rare example of cooperation in a galaxy often divided by conflict. As they docked, Elliot briefed Nylara on their contact at the station, a former Earth Alliance intelligence officer named Elenena Christensen, who had similarly become disillusioned with the corruption she discovered. Now operating independently, she maintained a network of informants throughout the sector. Can she be trusted? Nylara asked, as they prepared to disembark. As much as anyone can be in times like these, Elliot replied. She's taken significant risks to expose consortium activities in the past. Elenena met them at the docking bay, a tall, slender woman with calculating eyes and a perpetual half-smile. She greeted Elliot with a brief embrace before turning her assessing gaze on Nylara. A first warrior of the Ethetheran Empire, she observed. You've been busy, Drake. It's a long story, Elliot said. One best told somewhere private. Elenena nodded, leading them through the bustling corridors of the station to a secure meeting room in the diplomatic section. Once inside, with the door locked and scanning countermeasures activated, Elliot explained everything, finding Nylara in the ocean, the Dreyok pursuit, and finally, their plan to expose the conspiracy. Ambitious, Elenena commented when he finished, and dangerous. The consortium doesn't take kindly to whistleblowers. We know the risks, Nylara said firmly, but this war must end. And you're willing to betray your people's most sacred beliefs to make that happen? Elenena asked, her tone neutral, but her eyes sharp. I am not betraying them, Nylara replied, lifting her chin. I am saving them from those who have betrayed their trust. There is no honor in dying for a lie. Elenena studied her for a long moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied. Very well. I have contacts within both the Ethetheran High Command and the Dreyok Federation who might be sympathetic to your cause. But you'll need irrefutable evidence, something that can't be dismissed or covered up. We have the financial records, Elliot pointed out. Not enough. Elenena shook her head. Those could be fabricated. You need physical evidence, shipments, weapons, something tangible that links the consortium to both sides of the conflict. There is a supply depot, Nylara said slowly, an idea forming. In the Karios asteroid belt, my squadron was tasked with protecting shipments there, though we were never told what they contained or where they came from. That could work, Elenena mused. If we could document consortium ships delivering weapons there, and then trace those same weapons to Dreyok forces. It would prove the conspiracy, Elliot finished. But getting into a secure Ethetheran facility won't be easy. Leave that to me, Nylara said. My authentication codes should still be valid. And if they're not, Elenena asked pointedly. If your superiors have already declared you missing in action, or worse, a deserter? Nylara hadn't considered that possibility. As a first warrior who failed to achieve a glorious death, she might indeed have been branded a deserter, her codes revoked, her name stricken from the records. "Then we improvise," she said finally. "But we must try." The plan took shape over the next few hours. They would travel to the Karios depot, ostensibly on a routine inspection. Nilara would use her authority to gain access, while Elliot and Elenena gathered evidence. If all went well, they would present their findings to a joint council of Athetheran and Driok representatives, brokered by neutral parties at the trade post. As they finalized the details, Nilara found herself watching Elliot, his focus, his determination, his unwavering belief that they could make a difference. In the short time she had known him, he had challenged everything she thought she knew about humans, about honor, about purpose, and perhaps about herself as well. Their departure from the trade post was delayed by necessary repairs to the Nomad. The ship had taken damage during their escape from Terrace 3, and Elliot insisted on a thorough overhaul before attempting the risky mission to the Karios depot. During this time, Nilara continued her recovery, pushing her body to regain its former strength. She trained in the station's combat simulation chambers, gradually rebuilding her endurance and reflexes. Elliot often joined her, revealing a proficiency in hand-to-hand combat that surprised her. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" she asked, after a particularly intense sparring session. "Your technique is unusual for a medic." Elliot shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "Special Operations Medical Corps. We weren't just there to patch up wounds. Sometimes we had to create them first." "You continue to surprise me, Elliot Drake," Nilara admitted. "Perhaps there is more to humans than I previously believed." "We're full of surprises," he replied with a grin. "Some good, some bad, just like any species." Their days fell into a routine, training, planning, and learning about each other's cultures. Nilara found herself increasingly fascinated by human customs and beliefs, so different from the rigid structure of Athetheran society. Elliot, in turn, seemed genuinely interested in her people's history and traditions, separating the military indoctrination from the rich cultural heritage that preceded it. In quiet moments, Nilara found herself questioning everything she had once held sacred: the glory of death in battle, the shame of survival, the unquestioning obedience to authority. Ideas that had seemed immutable now appeared fragile, constructed rather than inherent. One evening, as they shared a meal in the Nomad's small galley, she voiced these doubts. "What if we are wrong? What if exposing this conspiracy destroys my people rather than saves them?" Elliot considered her question seriously. "Change always carries risk," he acknowledged. "But continuing on a path built on lies carries greater risk still. Your people are strong, Nilara. They survived before this war, and they will survive after it." "But who will they be?" she pressed. "If not warriors seeking glorious death, then what?" "That's for them to decide," Elliot said gently. "And for you, you talk about your people as if you're separate from them, but you're not. You're a Athetheran. Your choices, your future, they're part of your people's evolution." His words resonated deeply. She had always seen herself as a servant of her people, a weapon to be wielded for their glory. The idea that she might help shape their future, not through her death, but through her life, was revolutionary. The Nomad was finally repaired, its systems upgraded and enhanced. As they prepared for departure, Elenena provided them with one final piece of information: a sympathetic Athetheran official who would be present at the Joint Council, someone who might lend credibility to their claims. "Commander Talara," she said, handing Nilara a secure data chip. "She's been quietly investigating the same conspiracy from within the High Command. She'll be your ally when the time comes to present your evidence." Nilara's breath caught. "Commander Talara is alive. We were told she perished in the Battle of Nexus Prime." Another convenient lie, Elena replied grimly. She discovered too much, so they sent her on a suicide mission. When she survived, they declared her dead anyway. She's been operating undercover ever since, gathering evidence against the corrupt officials in your government. The revelation shook Nylara deeply. Talara had been her mentor, the officer who had recommended her for First Warrior status. To learn that she still lived and was fighting against the very system they had both served was both shocking and strangely validating. With renewed determination, they set course for the Karios Depot. The journey would take them dangerously close to active combat zones, but the Nomad's enhanced stealth systems should allow them to pass undetected. As they traversed the void between stars, Nylara found herself drawn increasingly to Elliot's company. Their conversations ranged from tactical planning to philosophical debates about the nature of honor and duty. Despite their different backgrounds, she discovered a kindred spirit in him, someone who questioned, who sought truth, who valued life. One night, as they sat on the bridge watching the stars streak past, Elliot asked the question she had been dreading. What will you do when this is over, if we succeed in exposing the conspiracy and ending the war? Nylara had no ready answer. Her entire life had been dedicated to combat, to seeking that glorious death that now seemed hollow and meaningless. I do not know, she admitted. My training has not prepared me for peace. Maybe that's the point, Elliot suggested. Maybe peace isn't something you prepare for. It's something you build, day by day, choice by choice. He was looking at her intently now, his green eyes reflecting the starlight. Nylara felt something shift between them, a tension that had nothing to do with their mission and everything to do with the growing connection she could no longer deny. And what about you? She asked, deflecting. What will you build when this is over? A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. I was thinking of setting up a medical practice somewhere quiet. Maybe teaching others what I've learned. He paused. I could use a partner. Someone with tactical experience. Someone who understands both worlds. The offer hung in the air between them, laden with meaning. Before Nylara could respond, the ship's proximity alert sounded, breaking the moment. Driok patrol vessel, Elliot reported, checking the sensors. They haven't detected us yet, but we're on an intercept course. Nylara moved to the tactical station, professionalism reasserting itself. Adjusting course to avoid detection. Recommend powering down non-essential systems to minimize our signature. They worked in practice coordination, guiding the Nomad through the patrol zone with minimal exposure. When the danger had passed, an odd sense of disappointment settled over Nylara. The moment of connection had been lost, replaced by the pressing reality of their mission. The Karios Depot came into view 2 days later, a massive structure embedded in the largest asteroid of the belt. Security was tight, with automated defense systems and patrol ships maintaining a constant vigil. This won't be easy, Elliot observed as they approached. Even with your codes, they're going to be suspicious of an unscheduled inspection. Leave that to me, Nylara said with more confidence than she felt. First Warriors have considerable latitude in security matters. She opened a communication channel to the depot. Karios Security. This is First Warrior Nylara requesting emergency docking. Authentication code Sigma 7 Delta 9 Epsilon. There was a long pause, during which Nylara held her breath. If her codes had been revoked, if she had been declared a deserter. Authentication confirmed, First Warrior, came the reply finally. State the nature of your emergency. Classified, Nylara responded curtly. High command eyes only. Prepare for immediate docking. Another pause, then, understood. Proceed to docking bay 3. Security teams will meet you upon arrival. As the channel closed, Elliot gave her an impressed look. That was convincing, but security teams aren't part of the plan. They are standard protocol, Nylara explained. To do otherwise would raise suspicion. We will need to adapt. Elena, who had been monitoring the exchange, nodded thoughtfully. I can create a diversion once we're inside, something to draw the security teams away long enough for you to access the main storage areas. The plan adjusted. They approached the docking bay. As promised, a security team was waiting. 4 Athetheran warriors in full combat gear, their expressions suspicious. First warrior, the leader greeted, saluting. We were not informed of your inspection. That was intentional, Nylara replied, her tone brooking no argument. Recent security breaches have necessitated unannounced audits. These are my technical advisors, she added, gesturing to Elliot and Elenena. They will assist in evaluating the depot's systems. The security leader hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but unwilling to challenge a first warrior directly. As you wish, but regulations require that you be escorted at all times within the facility. Of course, Nylara agreed smoothly. Lead on. As they were escorted through the depot's corridors, Nylara maintained a facade of stern authority, while Elliot and Elenena played the roles of deferential technicians. The facility was vast, housing not only weaponry, but supplies, vehicles, and communications equipment. The main storage sector is through here, the security leader explained, leading them toward a heavily reinforced door. All shipments are processed and cataloged before distribution to the fleet. I wish to see the most recent arrivals, Nylara commanded, particularly those from outsystem sources. A flicker of unease crossed the leader's face. Those shipments are under special protocol. First warrior, direct authorization from High Command is required. I am High Command's representative, Nylara countered. Or would you prefer I report your obstruction to General Kentar directly? The threat had the desired effect. The security leader reluctantly input his access code, opening the massive door to reveal a cavernous chamber beyond. Inside, stacked containers bore the unmistakable markings of Earth Consortium shipping lines, alongside others with Athetheran military designations. Perfect, Elenena murmured. This is exactly what we need. As they moved deeper into the storage area, Elliot activated a small scanner disguised as a standard datapad, documenting the shipments and their contents. Nylara kept the security team distracted with pointed questions about inventory procedures and security protocols. Their evidence gathering was proceeding smoothly when an alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility. The security leader's communicator chirped urgently. Security breach in Sector 7, he reported after listening to the message. All teams respond. He turned to Nylara, clearly torn between his duty to escort them and the need to respond to the breach. First warrior, I must request that you remain here until we secure the facility. Unacceptable, Nylara replied sharply. If there is a security breach, I must assess the situation personally. Lead us there immediately. The security leader hesitated, then nodded. This way. As they hurried through the corridors, Elenena caught Nylara's eye and gave a subtle nod. The breach was her diversion, timed perfectly to allow them access to the most restricted areas of the depot. When they reached Sector 7, chaos reigned, alarms wailed, emergency lights flashed, and security personnel rushed about in apparent confusion. In the midst of it all, the depot's commander, a grizzled Athetheran veteran, was barking orders. Commander, the security leader called. First warrior Nylara is here on inspection. What is the situation? The commander turned, surprise evident on his weathered features. First warrior, we received no notification of an inspection. That was intentional. Nylara repeated her earlier explanation. What has happened here? Automated systems detected an unauthorized data transmission, the commander explained. Origin point appears to be the main communication hub, but we found nothing there. A diversion, Nylara stated confidently. The real breach will be elsewhere. Your security teams are too concentrated here. Spread them out. Focus on sensitive areas. The commander nodded, accepting her authority without question. Yes, First Warrior. What are your orders? Secure the weapon storage in Sector 9, Nylara commanded. I will inspect the communication hub personally. These technicians will accompany me to trace the transmission. As the security teams dispersed to follow her orders, Elliot leaned close. Sector 9 is where we need to go, he whispered. That's where the consortium shipments are processed. I know, Nylara replied under her breath. We will circle back once the area is clear. They made a show of inspecting the communication hub, Elena deftly manipulating the systems to erase any trace of her diversion. Once satisfied that they were no longer being closely watched, they slipped away toward Sector 9. The weapons storage area was temporarily unguarded. The security team spread thin by Nylara's orders. Inside, they found what they were looking for: crates of advanced weaponry bearing Earth Consortium manufacturing codes, alongside identical weapons marked with Driok military designations. The smoking gun, Elliot muttered, documenting everything with his scanner. Identical weapons, sold to both sides. No wonder the war has been at a stalemate for generations. Nylara examined one of the weapons, a pulse rifle of consortium design but marked with Athetherin serial numbers. My squadron was equipped with these last cycle, she said quietly. We were told they were Athetherin technology, adapted from captured Driok designs. More lies, Elena said grimly. But now we have proof. They worked quickly, gathering all the evidence they could: shipping manifests, weapon specifications, financial records, all documented and encrypted for presentation to the Joint Council. Just as they were preparing to leave, the doors to the storage area hissed open. The depot commander stood there, flanked by security officers, his expression hard. First Warrior, he said, his tone dangerously calm. Would you care to explain why you diverted my security teams only to come here yourself, without escort? Nylara straightened, mind racing. I suspected a security breach in this sector. These technicians detected anomalous energy signatures consistent with unauthorized access. The commander's eyes narrowed. A convenient explanation, but I've just received a priority communication from High Command. There is no authorized inspection, and you, First Warrior Nylara, were declared missing in action 3 cycles ago. Commander, there has been a misunderstanding, Nylara began, but the security officers were already raising their weapons. Surrender your weapons and submit to detention, the commander ordered. All of you. Nylara exchanged a quick glance with Elliot and Elena. They had come too far to be captured now. The evidence they had gathered could end the war, save countless lives on both sides. It could not be lost. In a fluid motion, born of years of combat training, Nylara disarmed the nearest security officer, using his weapon to stun the others before they could react. Elliot and Elena moved with surprising coordination, neutralizing the remaining threats without lethal force. The commander backed away, reaching for his communicator. Nylara lunged forward, knocking the device from his hand. Commander, listen to me, she urged. What we have discovered here affects the future of our entire species. The war with the Driok is built on lies, perpetuated by corrupt officials in league with the Earth Consortium. The commander scoffed. Treason and conspiracy theories. You dishonor your rank, First Warrior. No, Nylara replied firmly. For the first time, I truly honor it, by seeking truth rather than glory, by fighting for peace rather than endless war. Something in her voice must have reached him, because the commander hesitated. What evidence do you claim to have? Elliot stepped forward, displaying the scanner. Proof that the Earth Consortium has been selling identical weapons to both Athetherin and Driok forces, deliberately prolonging the war for profit. The commander's expression shifted from skepticism to shock as he reviewed the data. This cannot be true. It is, Nylara insisted. And there is more. But we must leave this place to present it to those who can end this conflict. Will you help us, Commander? Or will you be complicit in the lies that have cost so many Athetheran lives? A long moment of silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, the commander lowered his weapon. "What do you need me to do?" With the commander's reluctant assistance, they were able to leave the depot without further incident. He provided them with clearance codes that would allow safe passage through Athetheran territory, though he refused to accompany them, citing his duty to his post. As the Nomad pulled away from the asteroid base, Nylara felt a curious mixture of emotions: relief at their escape, pride in the evidence they had gathered, and an unexpected sense of loss. For the first time in her life, she had acted against the direct orders of her superiors. She had chosen a path based not on glory or honor, as defined by her culture, but on what she believed to be right. "You did well back there," Elliot said, joining her on the bridge as they set course for the Vidian trade post. "That commander could have easily ordered his men to shoot us down. You convinced him." "I spoke truth," Nylara replied simply. "Perhaps he recognized it." "Or perhaps he recognized something in you," Elliot suggested. "The same thing I saw when I pulled you from that ocean. Not just a warrior seeking death, but someone worth saving." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the connection between them felt tangible, a bridge spanning the vast differences in their species and cultures. The moment was interrupted by Elenena, who entered with an urgent expression. "We've got a problem. The commander may have let us go, but he also sent a message to High Command. They know what we have, and they're scrambling interceptors to stop us from reaching Vidian." "How long do we have?" Elliot asked, already moving to the pilot's controls. 2 hours, maybe less," Elenena replied. "And we're still 5 hours from the trade post at maximum speed." Nylara considered their options. "We need a diversion. Something to delay the interceptors or draw them away from our course." "I might have an idea," Elliot said slowly. "But it's risky. The Verge Nebula is between us and Vidian. If we cut through it, we could mask our signature, maybe even lose them entirely." "The Verge is notoriously difficult to navigate," Elenena pointed out. "Ships have been lost in there, never to emerge." "I've navigated it before," Elliot assured them. "During the war. It's dangerous, yes, but less dangerous than facing a squadron of Athetheran interceptors." Nylara nodded decisively. "The Verge it is. Set course." The nebula loomed before them, a vast cloud of gas and dust, swirling in cosmic currents that could tear a ship apart if navigated carelessly. Its outer edges glowed with an eerie blue light, a beauty that belied the dangers within. Elliot guided the Nomad into the nebula with careful precision, his focus absolute as he navigated by instruments rather than visual references. The ship shuddered as they encountered the first of the turbulent currents, the hull creaking under the strain. "Shields at 80%, Elenena reported from the engineering station. "Hull integrity holding, but we're taking a beating." "Sensors show the interceptors have changed course to follow us," Nylara added, monitoring the tactical display. "They are attempting to cut us off before we reach the heart of the nebula." Elliot's hands moved deftly over the controls, adjusting their course to avoid the worst of the turbulence. "They won't follow us too far in," he predicted. "The risk to their ships is too great. If we can reach the densest part of the nebula, we can lose them completely." The pursuit continued for agonizing minutes, the interceptors closing the distance with their superior speed. Just as it seemed they would overtake the Nomad, Elliot executed a daring maneuver, diving the ship into a particularly dense pocket of the nebula, where swirling gases created a natural barrier. "Hold on!" he warned as the ship plunged into the maelstrom. The Nomad bucked and shuddered violently, alarms blaring as systems strained to compensate for the extreme conditions. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the ship might tear itself apart. Then, suddenly, they were through, emerging into a relatively calm pocket within the heart of the nebula. Behind them, the sensors showed the interceptors pulling back, unwilling to risk the same maneuver. "It worked," Elena breathed, relief evident in her voice. "They're breaking off pursuit." "For now," Elliot cautioned. "But they'll establish a perimeter around the nebula, waiting for us to emerge. We need to find another way out." Nylara studied the navigational charts, seeking an alternative route. "There," she said, pointing to a narrow corridor on the far side of the nebula. "This passage seems to lead toward Vidian, though not directly." "It's our best option," Elliot agreed, setting the new course. "But we'll need to conserve power. The nebula is draining our shields faster than expected." They proceeded cautiously through the nebula's heart, the ship's systems gradually recovering from the strain of their desperate entry. As they traveled, Nylara found herself contemplating the parallels between their journey and her own transformation, navigating treacherous currents, leaving behind the familiar, emerging changed on the other side. "What are you thinking about?" Elliot asked, noticing her pensive expression. "Transformation," she replied honestly. "When you pulled me from the ocean, I thought you had robbed me of my glorious death. Now I see you gave me something far more valuable, the chance to truly live, to make choices that matter." Elliot's smile was gentle, understanding. "Sometimes the greatest honor isn't in how we die, but in how we choose to live." The nebula's strange light played across his features, highlighting the warmth in his eyes. Nylara felt something shift within her, a barrier breaking down, a new possibility emerging. Before she could explore this feeling further, the ship shuddered violently. Warning alarms blared as the Nomad was suddenly caught in a powerful current, stronger than any they had encountered before. "Engine power dropping," Elena called over the noise. "The current is too strong." Elliot fought the controls, but the ship continued to be pulled deeper into the nebula, away from their planned course. "I can't break free," he admitted through gritted teeth. "We're being drawn toward the center." "The gravitational anomaly," Elena realized, checking the sensors. "It's stronger than the charts indicated." Nylara moved to the tactical station, her military training taking over. "Reverse thrusters at maximum. Redirect power from non-essential systems." They worked together, fighting the inexorable pull of the anomaly. The ship groaned under the strain, but gradually, their combined efforts began to show results. The Nomad's descent slowed, then stabilized. "We're holding position," Elliot reported, sweat beading on his forehead. "But we can't stay here long. The engines will burn out." Nylara studied the tactical display, seeking an escape route. Her eyes narrowed as she noticed a pattern in the swirling currents. "There," she pointed. "The currents form a spiral pattern. If we follow the outer edge, we might be able to slingshot around the anomaly and break free." "It's risky," Elliot cautioned. "One miscalculation and we could be torn apart." "Do we have a choice?" Elena asked. Elliot shook his head grimly. "Prepare for high G maneuvers. This won't be gentle." Nylara secured herself at the tactical station as Elliot began the delicate process of navigating the spiral current. The Nomad shuddered and pitched as it caught the edge of the flow, accelerating rapidly as the gravitational forces propelled it forward. Warnings flashed across every console. Hull integrity compromised, shields failing, engine temperature critical. But through it all, Elliot maintained control, his hands steady on the guidance systems, his focus absolute. Then, with a final violent lurch, the Nomad broke free of the nebula's grasp, shooting out into open space like a projectile from a cannon. "We did it," Elena breathed, checking the damage reports. "But we're not out of trouble yet. Life support is operating at minimal levels, and the engines need time to cool before we can attempt a jump to Vidian." "Any sign of the interceptors?" Elliot asked, still catching his breath from the intense maneuver. Nylara checked the long-range sensors. "Nothing yet. The nebula is interfering with scans, but they were positioned on the other side. It will take time for them to detect our emergence and adjust course." Time we can use. Elliot decided. We'll make emergency repairs, then proceed to Vidian at maximum sustainable speed. With luck, we'll reach the trade post before they catch up to us. The next hours were a blur of activity as they worked to repair the Nomad's damaged systems. Nylara found herself impressed by Elliot's technical knowledge, not just of medical equipment, but of ship systems as well. He moved with practiced efficiency, prioritizing the most critical repairs with a soldier's pragmatism. As they worked side by side in the engine room, Nylara found herself studying him with new eyes. This human, who had saved her life, who had challenged her beliefs, who now risked everything to help her expose a truth that could save both their peoples. He was unlike anyone she had ever known, ever. "You're staring," Elliot observed, without looking up from the circuit panel he was repairing. "I am considering," Nylara replied carefully. "Considering what?" "Possibilities I had not previously entertained." Elliot paused in his work, meeting her gaze. Something passed between them, an understanding, a connection that transcended words. For a moment, the rest of the universe seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in the cramped engine room of a damaged ship. The moment was broken by Elena's voice over the intercom. "Engines are back online. We have incoming transmission from Vidian Trade Post. Commander Talara is requesting secure communication." They hurried to the bridge, where Elena had already established the encrypted channel. The screen flickered, then resolved into the stern features of Commander Talara, a face Nylara had believed she would never see again. "First Warrior," Talara greeted, her voice as strong and commanding as Nylara remembered. "Reports of your survival have reached High Command. They are displeased." "Commander," Nylara replied, struggling to contain her emotions. "I was told you perished at Nexus Prime." "A convenient fiction," Talara said dryly. "One that has allowed me to work more effectively from the shadows. I understand you have discovered certain truths about our ongoing conflict with the Drayok?" "Yes, Commander. The Earth Consortium has been—" "Not over an open channel," Talara interrupted sharply. "Even encrypted, it is not secure. Your evidence must be presented in person, to representatives of both our peoples. I have arranged such a meeting at Vidian, but you must hurry. Forces are already moving to prevent your arrival." "We have encountered some of those forces," Nylara reported. "Athetheran interceptors. And there will be more," Talara warned. "The corrupt officials within both governments are desperate to maintain the status quo. They will stop at nothing to silence you." "We'll be there," Elliot promised. "But our ship has sustained damage. We may need an escort for the final approach." "I will arrange it," Talara assured them. "But be cautious. Trust no one until you reach the council chambers." Her expression softened slightly as she looked at Nylara. "It is good to see you alive, First Warrior. Perhaps there is more glory in survival than our people have been taught to believe." With that cryptic statement, the transmission ended, leaving Nylara to contemplate its meaning. Glory in survival, a concept that would have seemed blasphemous to her just days ago. Now, it resonated with unexpected truth. "She seems formidable," Elliot commented. "She is," Nylara confirmed. "Commander Talara was my mentor when I first joined the Imperial Fleet. Her death was a significant loss to our military, and to me personally. And now she's our ally," Elena observed. "That could make all the difference when we present our evidence to the Council." The repaired engines allowed them to make good speed toward Vidian, though still well below the Nomad's usual capabilities. As they approached the trade post, the sensors detected multiple vessels converging on their position. "Interceptors?" Elliot asked tensely. "No," Nylara replied, studying the readings. "Mixed vessels, Athetheran and Drayok?" She looked up in surprise. "They are flying in formation, not attacking each other." "That must be the escort Talara arranged," Elena surmised. Representatives from both sides who share our suspicions about the war. Sure enough, the incoming ships established communication, identifying themselves as the promised escort. Under their protection, the Nomad was able to dock at Vidian without incident, though Nylara noted the presence of other vessels, both Athetheran and Drayok, maintaining position at the edge of the station's defensive perimeter. "Not everyone is happy we're here," Elliot observed, following her gaze. "But they dare not attack a neutral station," Nylara replied. "Not without provoking a wider conflict." Commander Talara met them at the docking bay, accompanied by a small contingent of trusted officers, a mix of Athetheran, Drayok, and human. The sight of traditional enemies standing together without hostility was jarring, a visual representation of the change they hoped to achieve on a larger scale. "We must move quickly," Talara urged after brief introductions. "The council is assembled, but we have limited time before our opponents can organize more direct interference." As they made their way through the station's corridors, Nylara found herself walking beside her former mentor. "Commander," she began hesitantly, "I must ask, how did you come to question the war? To see the truth behind it?" Talara's expression hardened. "I lost my entire squadron at Nexus Prime. Not to enemy fire, but to faulty weapons. Weapons that failed precisely when victory was within our grasp. When I investigated, I discovered those weapons had been deliberately sabotaged to prevent either side from gaining a decisive advantage." She glanced at Nylara. "That discovery nearly cost me my life. It did cost me my identity, my rank, everything I had worked for. Yet you continued to fight," Nylara observed. "I found a new purpose," Talara replied simply. "Not in seeking a glorious death, but in preventing needless deaths, in seeking truth rather than glory." Words that echoed Nylara's own transformation. Perhaps this was the true Athetheran way, not blind obedience to tradition, but the courage to evolve, to adapt, to grow beyond the limitations of the past. The council chambers were imposing, a vast circular room with tiered seating, designed to accommodate representatives from a dozen different species. Today, however, only 3 sections were occupied: Athetheran, Drayok, and human observers from neutral colonies. As they entered, a hush fell over the assembly. All eyes turned to Nylara and her companions, some curious, others openly hostile. At the center of the chamber stood a holographic projector, ready to display the evidence they had gathered. Commander Talara took her place at the head of the Athetheran delegation, while a severe-looking Drayok officer, introduced as Sub-Commander Vextral, represented his people. Both nodded solemnly to Nylara, acknowledging her role in what was to come. "This emergency session of the Vidian Council is now convened," announced a human mediator. "We are gathered to hear evidence of alleged conspiracy in the ongoing conflict between the Athetheran Empire and the Drayok Federation. First Warrior Nylara, you may present your findings." Taking a deep breath, Nylara stepped forward. This was the moment everything had been leading to, the culmination of her journey from death-seeking warrior to truth-seeking diplomat. She felt Elliot's presence beside her, steady and supportive, and drew strength from it. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice clear and strong. "For generations, our peoples have been locked in a war that has claimed countless lives on both sides. We have been taught that this conflict is necessary, inevitable, a matter of honor for Athetherans, of security for the Drayok. Today, I present evidence that this war has been artificially prolonged, not for the benefit of either of our peoples, but for the profit of those who supply our weapons." With that introduction, she activated the holographic display, showing the evidence they had gathered at the Karios depot. Identical weapons bearing the marks of both empires. Financial transactions linking corrupt officials to Earth Consortium accounts. Internal memos discussing strategies to maintain the profitable equilibrium of ongoing conflict. As the evidence mounted, Reactions among the council members ranged from shock to outrage to grim vindication. Some, particularly those with known ties to military contractors, grew visibly uncomfortable, while others leaned forward with increasing interest. When Nylara had finished presenting the physical evidence, Elliot stepped forward to provide context, explaining how the Earth Consortium had manipulated both sides, feeding intelligence and advanced weaponry in carefully measured doses to ensure neither side could gain a decisive advantage. This war has never been about territory or resources, he concluded. Those are merely pretexts. It has always been about profit, trillions of credits flowing into the coffers of arms manufacturers and their political allies. Sub-Commander Vextral rose from his seat, his scaled features set in a rigid mask. "These accusations are grave," he said, his voice a low rumble. "If true, they represent a betrayal of both our peoples that cannot go unpunished." "The evidence speaks for itself," Commander Talara replied. "But the question before us is not merely one of punishment for past wrongs. It is about forging a new path forward, one where Athetherin and Driok are not enemies, but potential allies against those who have manipulated us all." The debate that followed was heated, with factions from both sides arguing passionately about the implications of the evidence and the appropriate response. Throughout it all, Nylara stood firm, answering questions with clarity and conviction. Her warrior's discipline now channeled into diplomatic purpose. As the session stretched into its third hour, a commotion at the chamber entrance drew everyone's attention. A squad of heavily armed Athetherin soldiers burst in, led by a senior officer Nylara recognized as General Kentar, one of the officials implicated in the conspiracy. "This proceeding is unauthorized," Kentar declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the assembly. "These traitors have no standing to present such fabricated claims." Commander Talara rose to her feet, her posture rigid with authority. "General Kentar, you forget yourself. This is neutral territory. You have no jurisdiction here." "I have the authority of the High Command," Kentar retorted, "and orders to apprehend these individuals for crimes against the Empire." The tension in the chamber was palpable as Drayok representatives began to rise, hands moving toward concealed weapons. The situation teetered on the edge of violence, threatening to undo everything they had worked for. In that critical moment, Nylara stepped forward, her voice ringing with conviction. "General Kentar fears the truth because he profits from lies. He and his conspirators have sacrificed generations of Athetherin warriors, not for glory or honor, but for personal gain." She turned to address the entire assembly. "I was raised to believe that the greatest honor was to die in battle. Now I understand that the true honor lies in living for truth, in fighting for peace rather than endless war. My people are warriors, yes, but we can be more than that. We can be builders, creators, explorers. The Driok are not our natural enemies. They are potential allies in a universe filled with greater challenges than those we have created for ourselves." Her words resonated through the chamber, touching hearts and minds that had been closed by generations of enmity. Even some of Kentar's soldiers seemed moved, their weapons lowering slightly as they absorbed her message. Sensing the shift in the room, Commander Talara seized the moment. "I move that this council formally recognize the evidence presented by First Warrior Nylara and her companions, and establish an independent investigation into the conspiracy they have uncovered." "I second this motion," Sub-Commander Vextral declared, to the visible shock of many present, "and further propose an immediate cessation of hostilities between our peoples, while this investigation proceeds." The mediator called for a vote, and despite Kentar's sputtered objections, the motion passed with overwhelming support. The general, seeing his authority crumbling before him, made one last desperate move, ordering his soldiers to seize Nylara and her companions by force. But the soldiers hesitated, caught between conflicting loyalties. In that moment of uncertainty, Elliot stepped forward, placing himself between Nylara and the Ethetheran troops. "Your first warrior has shown more courage and honor today than any warrior seeking death in battle," he told them. "She has risked everything to save lives, Ethetheran lives, that would otherwise be sacrificed for profit. Is that not worthy of your respect, of your protection?" The soldiers looked to one another, then to Nylara. She met their gaze steadily, a fellow warrior who had walked the same path they now traveled. Slowly, deliberately, they lowered their weapons. General Kentar, seeing his authority completely undermined, turned to flee, only to find his path blocked by Dreyok's security forces, who had been quietly summoned by Subcommander Vextral. The general was taken into custody, the first of many who would face justice for their role in the conspiracy. In the days that followed, the evidence Nylara and her companions had gathered was examined in detail by experts from both empires. Additional conspirators were identified and apprehended. Negotiations began for a formal peace treaty, not just a cessation of hostilities, but a framework for cooperation and mutual development. Throughout this process, Nylara found herself increasingly drawn into diplomatic circles, her unique perspective as both a warrior and a peacemaker proving invaluable. Commander Talara, reinstated to her former rank and appointed to the Ethetheran delegation, became her mentor once again, this time in the arts of peace rather than war. And through it all, Elliot remained at her side, offering insight, support, and something else that Nylara was only beginning to understand, a connection that transcended their different origins, a bond forged in shared danger and common purpose. One evening, as they stood on an observation deck overlooking the vast expanse of stars, Nylara finally gave voice to the question that had been growing in her mind. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "When the peace treaty is signed, when justice has been served, what then?" Elliot turned to her, the starlight reflecting in his eyes. "That depends on what you want. Nylara, your people need leaders who understand both the old ways and the new possibilities. You could help shape the Ethetheran future." "And you?" she pressed. "What will you do?" "I meant what I said before," he replied, taking her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable to her just weeks ago. "A medical practice somewhere quiet, teaching others what I've learned." He paused, his expression open and vulnerable. "And I still could use a partner, someone who understands both worlds." Nylara looked down at their joined hands, Ethetheran orange against human pink, so different, yet fitting together perfectly. "I know nothing of healing," she admitted. "Only of warfare." "You know more than you think," Elliot countered gently. "You helped heal the rift between our peoples. You chose life over death, creation over destruction. Those are the fundamental principles of healing." The truth of his words resonated within her. She had changed, grown beyond the limitations of her training, her culture, her past. And perhaps that growth need not end here. "I would like to learn," she said finally, looking up to meet his gaze. "About healing, about peace, about possibilities." Elliot's smile was like the dawn breaking over Drevis, warm and full of promise. "Then we'll learn together." As they stood there, the stars seemed to shine more brightly, as if approving of this new beginning. The nomad awaited them, repaired and ready for whatever journey they chose to undertake. And beyond the viewport, the vast expanse of space stretched out before them. Not a battlefield now, but a frontier, filled with possibilities neither of them had dared to imagine before. Nylara, who had once sought glory in death, now found herself embracing the greater challenge and the greater honor of living, of building something new from the ashes of the old, of forging connections where once there had been only enmity, of transforming from a warrior of death to a warrior of life. And as she stood beside Elliot, their future stretching out before them like the stars themselves, She knew that this moment, this choice, this new beginning, was the truest glory she had ever known.